The day after the draft, the Toronto Raptors fire Masai Ujiri, who, of course, has been there over a decade at this point, won a championship in 2019 after taking a big risk, trading for Kawhi Leonard. They win the title. Masai Ujiri, if you're a listener of this podcast, if you've read my mock drafts over the last few months, I have consistently said that Masai is under pressure to turn this thing around. And, well, I didn't expect him to get fired the day after the draft. He had 1 year left on his contract. So for this to happen today is crazy timing, Tom. I like what they did in the draft. They got Colin Murray-Boyles out of South Carolina with a 9th pick, a versatile, hard-nosed defender. Reminds me of like Draymond Green on defense, Julius Randle on offense. And they got Elijah Martin with a 39th pick, tone setter, part of that Florida Gators national title team, one of the best athletes in the draft. 2 guys that are defense-oriented players. And then Masai's gone. So here's what I didn't say prior when it came to the pressure he's under. My understanding is that Raptors ownership, MLSE, they felt like Masai was stretched too thin. With Basketball Without Borders, his nonprofit Giants of Africa, Raptors ownership felt like the time he was investing there was growing and it was detracting from his role as running the Raptors franchise, their team itself. And whether that's fair or not, that's the way certain members in that ownership group, MLSE, felt about Masai Ujiri. I just think it shows a lot of dysfunction for him to actually be fired the morning after the draft. To me, that says something more about ownership and less about Masai Ujiri, who has a long, very high-level track record going back to when he was in Denver, never mind all his years with Toronto. So I think it's weird, Tom. What are your initial thoughts on the Raptors firing Masai?
He had a year left onto his deal, so this is the firing. Straight up. Like they pushed him out because they wanted a new voice in that locker room, where Bobby Webster has been running a lot of the basketball operations already as one of the most empowered general managers as you'll find in the NBA. But he had another year left on his deal. He just acquired Brandon Ingram at the trade deadline, a guy who did not play because of an ankle injury since December 7th, and then re-signed him to a contract extension with a lot of that trade package was from the Pascal Siakam deal. So think about that. He makes a big trade, a big swing for an injured 27-year-old Brandon Ingram, gives him a big contract extension, and then a couple months later, after his postseason in April, his exit interview press conference, 2 months later, he's out. And so the organization seemed to have no rudder going forward. Are you trying to win now, or are you trying to build around Scotty Barnes, a different timeline than Pascal Siakam and Brandon Ingram for that matter? And then Emmanuel Quickley, RJ Barrett, Brandon Ingram, they haven't even played together yet, and yet you still make that big contract extension because you have to justify the Pascal Siakam trade, which, by the way, at the time of the deal, the Pascal Siakam trade, I wrote about last year and saying this was a horrible trade. Think about the 3 first-round picks that they got in that deal for Pascal Siakam and Bruce Brown. The 3 first-round picks were late firsts from Indiana, and then they trade one of them to the New Orleans Pelicans for Brandon Ingram, and then Indiana gets that trade back, that 2026 first-round pick. That's not a great return for an all-NBA, all-star caliber player, Pascal Siakam, who is up to being a restricted free agent, and they got what I deemed a very poor return for Pascal Siakam. None of those picks were valuable, and even though you can put on the billboard 3 first-round picks, they were late first, almost guaranteed to be late first. And so, to me, what this says is that as a leader, Masai Ujiri lost his way. Because what I saw in Pascal Siakam's finals press conference, when he said, I lost the joy, I wrote this down because I wanted to make sure I had it right. He said, I'm so glad that the Indiana Pacers traded for me, and quote, it was dark for me, not fun at all playing basketball. He found his joy for the game, and I lost that for a while. He's talking about Toronto Raptors after winning a championship in 2019 under Masai Ujiri's leadership. I'm talking about a guy that Masai Ujiri, in that postseason press conference, He said, I didn't even enjoy the 2019 NBA championship because his run-in with police when he was trying to go on the floor to celebrate, understandably. But also, he said, every moment of that celebration was me talking about how am I going to recite Kawhi Leonard. And so this joyless kind of this culture that he set where Pascal Siakam, who was a homegrown talent, is saying, I was darn near depressed in Toronto, and he was so happy to get out of there. This didn't seem like an organization that was built around positivity and joy. And you're hearing from Masai Ujiri at the end of this season. You're hearing Pascal Siakam. You're seeing that Kawhi Leonard left after winning a championship. You're seeing that Serge Ibaka, Fred VanVleet, Danny Green, Marc Gasol all left, walked in free agency. And in the Pascal Siakam and Kyle Lowry and I guess you could throw in OG Anunoby in there, the returns on those trades, you can see, even though OG was not part of the 2019 championship, you can see how the post-championship regime or the post-championship chapter of the Toronto Raptors was really poor, and worse yet, a really poor workplace, as you can hear from Pascal Siakam.
I think with Masai, the VanVleet one was bad. That was a really rough one for him. So I think with VanVleet walking, the Pascal Siakam situation, as you said, being a big one, a lot of mistakes by Masai Ujiri in recent years. And so that's why I think, ownership is probably right about certain things with his performance in recent years ever since the championship. But ownership firing him the day after draft is just strange. And so Bobby Webster, I'm sure he'll probably move into that role, seems to be a highly intelligent front office guy. We'll see how that plays out. But I like what they did in the draft, whether it was Bobby Webster or Masai Ujiri or somebody else.
Well, Bobby Webster did the Kev, real quick, he did the post-game about the draft press conference too.
Yes.
So it's not like Masai Ujiri is answering questions about Colin Murray-Boyles. It's Bobby Webster, and has been the last few years, him answering questions about the draft, because he is the GM and it's not Masai.